Welcome back, 4L Scholars. So today what we're looking at is the second part of our grammar notes that goes over the subjunctive, or at least the present subjunctive. And in the last couple videos, we did some practice. We learned about how to form the present subjunctive in Latin. So we're not really going to spend much time talking about that right now. There's some explanation on the document itself here, but you can go back and look at your previous grammar notes for that. So instead, what we're going to spend most of the time right now talking about is how you use the present subjunctive, or at least how you identify it. Okay, remember the way that you identify if a verb is in fact in the subjunctive is you know what conjugation the verbs are. We've had a lot of practice with identifying that. If it's first conjugation, A becomes E. Second, E becomes EA, and so forth. So again, you can go back and look at the other videos, the other grammar notes for that information. So today, instead, what we're going to talk about is the types of clauses that the subjunctive shows up in, and how you can identify them. Okay, how they sound in English, as well as the couple of different tips and tricks for telling what kind you have. Okay, so first off, as you'll see on the next page, every use of the subjunctive can be divided into one of two columns. They're either independent or dependent. Okay, independent and dependent mean exactly what it sounds like they mean. Independent means it's a use that does not depend on anything else. It can just exist all by itself in the sentence. And dependent is the opposite. It cannot exist without another clause or another another thing like bringing about its existence. Okay, well, you'll see what I mean by that in just a second. Okay, but keep those terms in mind: independent and dependent. All right. Again, there's a chart on the next page, and the chart will get bigger and bigger for all the different uses of the subjunctive that we will learn. So you'll see this chart over and over again, and we'll get lots of practice filling that in as well. All right. So to give you two examples of sentences. One is an independent clause, and another is a dependent clause. You can look down here at the bottom of the page. Okay, in English, the phrase "you should walk the dog," period, right? That is a sentence. Remember, a clause is just a chunk of sentence that might stand on its own, or it might have to be joined with other things. So this is a clause that actually is a complete sentence, and we can identify it as an independent clause because it stands on its own, right? You should walk the dog. That is a complete sentence. Okay? Also, with the word should, as you might recognize from our last grammar notes, should start ringing some bells in your head, like, ah, yes, there must be a subjunctive going on here. All right. Now let's contrast it with the next clause down here that's underlined, which is a dependent clause. You walk the dog so that he may get some exercise, or so that he gets exercise, or something to that effect. Okay? The point is, you walk the dog is a complete sentence. So that he may get some exercise is not a complete sentence. Okay? That cannot stand on its own. So it's a dependent clause. It cannot exist without the first half of that sentence. Again, just listen to how this sounds, right? Say it out loud and you'll realize, oh yeah, that's not a complete sentence. So that he may get some exercise. Okay? You need the other half or it just doesn't quite make sense. Okay, so again, independent clauses all by themselves. Dependent clauses are a piece of a bigger sentence. Okay, so let's take a look at the next page here. And here's our chart. So again, this chart will get pretty long here in the coming weeks, but we have an independent use of the subjunctive, which is the same as saying it's the main clause, right? It's the sentence, all by itself. And And then a dependent clause, okay, which is a subordinate clause. Literally, it's subordinate to, or it's joined with another sentence piece, another clause. Okay, and those two types of clauses that we're going to learn about right now are called the jussive and purpose. Okay, jussive, it's also called hortatory. We'll get an explanation right here, but so a jussive clause, I use the word jussive a lot more, but these both pretty much mean the same thing, jussive and hortatory. These are main clauses, and a purpose clause is a dependent clause. Okay, so we'll look at those in succession right now. So first, a jussive clause, it expresses a command or an exhortation. Okay, so it's almost like using the imperative mood, except not quite as severe usually, right? Like if you command someone to do something, right? Go outside. That is a command, like a straight up command, no doubt in your mind. Go outside. You can hear the exclamation point, right? That's the imperative. But a jussive subjunctive is more like, let's go outside, right? Let's go over there, right? Let him go outside if he wants, right? You see here how it's not quite as strong. You kind of pull back just a little bit. Well, that's what the jussive subjunctive is like in Latin too. Okay, so just really quick on the names. Usually we use the word hortatory for it if it's first person, and jussive if it's third person. Honestly, if you ask me, they're pretty much the same thing. It's just two different names for the same kind of idea. But if you're curious, hortatory, that weird word, comes from the Latin verb hortor that we're going to learn this year. And then jussive comes from the verb eubeo, eubere, usi, usum, from earlier on in your Latin career, the word to command or to order. All right, now, how do you recognize if you have a jussive subjunctive? Well, first things first, the verb has to be in the present subjunctive. Okay, there's 3 other tenses of the subjunctive, but right now we're just looking at the present. Okay, so you'll have a present subjunctive verb, and it'll most likely be the only verb in the sentence. I mean, that can vary, but usually, at least in our examples, it'll be the only verb in the sentence. So you'll have to identify that it's present subjunctive, right? So you'll notice that vowel change we were talking about in past grammar notes. And sometimes it might be negated, right? And if it is, you'll see the word nay and plus the present subjunctive, right? In the past, you've probably seen the word known to negate things, which we usually translate as not. Nay is pretty much the same thing. It's just that you use nay with the subjunctive, right? It's one of the ways you can tell that you're using the subjunctive. All right, one of those little clues. So again, for the translation, I like to use let, because there's a couple of really common English phrases like let's go do this. But you can also use the word should, right? Like he should do this, you should do this, she should do that. Okay. Really quick, there it is. Let's look at a couple of examples. We'll just look at the first 2 in the interest of time, and you can read the rest on your own. So the first example, we have puellam laudemus. All right? We would translate this, we first off recognize it as a hortatory or a jussive subjunctive because, well, it's a short little sentence. We have one verb, all right? And we notice it's in the subjunctive because this is the verb laudo, laudare. So that long A has changed into an E. So therefore, it's present subjunctive. So you can translate this a couple of different ways. So either let's, let us praise the girl, or we should praise the girl. Right? Both of those work. Let's, nice and quickly move on to the second one here. We have cogitem nunc de hac re. Right? So we have the verb cogitem. This comes from the verb cogito, cogitare. So once again, that A becomes an E, And remember, in the first person singular, the O changes to an M as well. So cogitem would be, either let me think or I should think. Now, dehacre, about this subject, about this matter. Okay? So again, you can check out the next couple of examples on your own. We'll go ahead and move up to the purpose clauses, the subjunctive for purpose, right now. And just really quick, really simply, you can identify a purpose clause 9 times out of 10 because you'll see this funny little word called ut. Or if it's negated, nay. Nay is sort of the opposite of ut. All right? If you see the word ut, you absolutely, at least for now, have a purpose clause. All right? And the way that you translate a subjunctive with this ut, it almost sounds like an infinitive. And by almost, I mean, it pretty much does. You use the word to or so that. Okay? So a purpose clause really explains the question of why. Why did you do this? Well, I did this so that I could do that, right? I did this to do something else. Okay. So again, let's look at a couple of examples here in Latin really quick. Again, we'll just go through the first 2 and then you can look at the rest yourselves. Number 1, hoc or hoc dicit ut eos uet. Okay? So right away we see the word ut. So that should start sending off some bells and thinking, oh yeah, okay, we probably have a purpose clause here. And you notice you have 2 verbs in this sentence. One is in the main clause. This is an indicative verb. And then the other verb here in bold, this is your subjunctive verb. Again, because you identify it, because this is the verb uo-uare, A becomes an E. So this is your subjunctive verb. And again, your verb dico-dicere here, third conjugation verb, just regular old present indicative. So he says this, ut, in order to, or in order that, or so that. A few different ways you can do it. So he says this to help them. Right? He says this in order to help them. He says this so that he may help them. Right? There's a bunch of different ways. Okay, let's look at a negative one, and again, I'll let you look at the rest yourselves here. So we have, again, 2 verbs in the sentence. We have discedit and audiat. And we also have this nay. Remember, the nay is just the negative of ut. So discedo, discedere, third conjugation verb. So this is just a regular old indicative verb in the main clause here. So he leaves, or he departs. Okay? Audiat, again, we can identify that this is subjunctive because this is our verb audire, that long I becomes ia. So he leaves so that he may not hear this. You can hear how English is a little clunky. We have to jump around a couple different times to really capture the meaning. But anyway, so again, there's a bunch more here, but you can read through those yourselves. Please make sure you contact me. Let me know if you have any specific questions about those. Again, please go back and double check, go over your knowing how to identify a conjugation and how you can change each conjugation into the subjunctive, right? That's going to be huge. If you are still struggling with that, make sure you're practicing it all the time so you can get that straight. All right, scholars, I'll go ahead and save the practice on the back page. I'll do a separate video about that and upload that in Infinite Campus along with this stuff a little bit later. So anyway, for now, again, always contact me if and when you have any questions. All right, thank you, scholars. I will talk to you soon.